I'm Elias Thorne, and if you told me a year ago that I'd be sitting in a mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut, sipping on a glass of brandy, while my mother-in-law glared at me like I was a bug she wanted to squash, I have laughed in your face. Back then, I was just an architect with a small studio apartment and dreams bigger than my bank account. But life has a funny way of throwing curveballs. Mine came in the form of Serafina Montgomery, my wife, my anchor, and the reason I'm now living this surreal high society nightmare. The Montgomery estate is something out of a magazine. Crystal chandeliers dripping from 20-foot ceilings, oil paintings of ancestors who look like they disapprove of me even more than Margaret does, and gardens so perfectly manicured it feels like stepping into a painting. But beneath all the polish, there's tension. And most of it seems to come from Margaret Montgomery, Serafina's mom. She's always been polite to my face, at least outwardly, but her eyes? They're daggers. Every time she looks at me, I feel like she's mentally cataloging every flaw. My lack of pedigree, my middle-class upbringing, the fact that I didn't go to some Ivy League school like everyone else in this damn family. Tonight, we're hosting one of their famous dinner parties, the kind where people wear cufflinks worth more than my monthly rent. The guests are milling around, laughing too loudly at jokes that aren't funny, and sipping champagne as though it's water. Me? I'm standing near the fireplace. Try not to fidget in my suit, which still doesn't quite feel like it belongs to me. That's when Margaret approaches, holding a tray of drinks. Her smile is tight, almost forced. "Elias," she says sweetly, "you simply must try this brandy. It's a rare vintage." Something about the way she says it makes my skin crawl. Let me backtrack for a second. If you're wondering how I ended up here, married into a family that probably wouldn't invite me to their parties if I weren't related to them, it's because of Serafina. She's everything Margaret isn't. Warm, kind, brilliant. We met during one of my projects, a modern art gallery in Manhattan. She was a curator, and I was the guy hired to redesign the space. From the moment she walked into the construction site, clipboard in hand, and wearing those oversized glasses that somehow made her look even cuter, I knew she was different. Our romance was fast and intense, fueled by late-night conversations about art, architecture, and our shared love of old jazz records. When she introduced me to her parents, I thought I'd won the lottery. Victor, her dad, seemed aloof but harmless, buried in his phone or his wine glass most of the time. Margaret, though, she barely shook my hand before launching into a series of thinly veiled insults disguised as questions. "So, Elias, what exactly do you do again?" she asked, her tone sugary but laced with venom. Still, I figured it was just rich people stuff, the kind of thing you see in movies, and that once they got to know me, things would improve. Spoiler alert, they didn't. Fast forward to tonight, and here I am, stuck in this gilded cage, pretending to enjoy myself while Margaret circles me like a shark. As she hands me the glass of brandy, I can't help but notice how her fingers linger just a fraction longer than necessary. There's something off about her demeanor, too eager, too calculated. My gut tells me to set the drink down, but instead, I take it. After all, what's the worst that could happen? Boy, was I wrong. As the evening wears on, I find myself nursing that glass of brandy, swirling the amber liquid around without taking more than a sip. Something about Margaret's behavior earlier has left a bad taste in my mouth, literally and figuratively. She keeps watching me, her gaze sharp enough to cut glass, and I can't shake the feeling that she's waiting for something to happen. When no one's looking, I glance over at Victor, who's lounging in his armchair, nursing his own drink. His glass sits untouched on the side table next to him, and an idea flickers in my mind. Without thinking too hard about it, I swap the two glasses. It's a stupid move, impulsive and reckless, but I tell myself it's harmless. Besides, what are the odds that anything's actually wrong with the drink? The rest of the night passes in a blur of small talk and forced smiles. By the time dessert rolls around, I've almost forgotten about the whole thing. Almost. It's after dinner, when everyone's gathered in the living room for coffee and liqueurs, that things start to unravel. Victor picks up the glass I swapped, the one meant for me, and takes a long, leisurely sip. At first, nothing happens. Then, suddenly, he starts coughing violently, clutching his chest like he can't breathe. Chaos erupts as people rush to his side, shouting for someone to call an ambulance. I freeze, my heart pounding in my chest. Did I just cause this? Was Margaret really trying to poison me? And now her husband's paying the price instead? Margaret, meanwhile, looks pale as a ghost. She stammers something about Victor having a weak heart, but her voice cracks under the weight of the lie. Serafina bursts into tears, clinging to her father as paramedics arrive and whisk him away. I don't say a word. Not about the swap glasses, not about the uneasy feeling I had earlier. How could I? Everyone's already looking at me like I'm some interloper who's brought shame to their precious family. The next few days are a whirlwind of hospital visits, whispered arguments, and awkward silences. Victor pulls through. Thank God, but the doctors find traces of sedative in his system. The police get involved, turning the Montgomery estate into a crime scene overnight. Reporters camp outside the gates, snapping photos and speculating about what happened. Margaret, predictably, points a finger at the staff. It must have been one of the maids, she insists, her voice shrill and defensive. They handle the drinks all the time. No one believes her. Not really. But without evidence, there's nothing anyone can do. Meanwhile, I can't stop replaying the events in my head. Why did Margaret give me that drink? What was she hoping to achieve? And why does she keep shooting me these dagger-eyed stares whenever she thinks no one's looking? Things come to a head a few nights later, when I overhear Margaret talking to her maid in hushed tones. I'm in the library, supposedly looking for a book, when I catch snippets of their conversation. We need to clean up this mess, Margaret says, her voice low and urgent. If anyone finds out, she trails off, but the implication is clear. My stomach churns. Whatever she's hiding, it's big, bigger than I realized. And the worst part? I'm stuck right in the middle of it. After overhearing Margaret's cryptic conversation, I feel like I'm walking on eggshells in my own damn house, or at least the house I'm married into. Every creak of the floorboards makes me jump. Every shadow seems sinister. I know I need to figure out what's going on. But how? I'm an architect, not a detective. Still, something inside me won't let it go. Maybe it's pride, or maybe it's survival instinct. Either way, I start poking around. The library becomes my unofficial headquarters. It's where Montgomerys keep their family records, old letters, and ledgers. Things that might hold clues about whatever skeleton is rattling in this gilded closet. One evening, while everyone else is distracted with dinner prep, I find a dusty box shoved into the back of a shelf. Inside are stacks of yellowed papers, some brittle with age. As I sift through them, one phrase leaps off the page: financial distress. Turns out, the Montgomerys aren't as untouchable as they seem. For years, Margaret has been hemorrhaging money, lavish parties, designer clothes, vacations to places I've never even heard of. And Victor? He's been quietly cutting her off, funneling funds away from her personal accounts. No wonder she looked ready to snap during those tense family dinners. But does that explain why she tried to spike my drink? Or was it really meant for Victor all along? By now, I'm starting to feel like a character in one of those noir films I used to watch late at night when I couldn't sleep. Except this isn't black and white, and the stakes are painfully real. The more I dig, the more tangled the web becomes. One afternoon, while Margaret's out shopping, avoiding questions from police, I sneak into her bedroom. I tell myself it's harmless, just a quick look, but deep down, I know I'm crossing a line. Her vanity is cluttered with expensive perfumes and jewelry, but it's the locked drawer in her nightstand that catches my eye. Using a paperclip I swiped from Victor's study, don't judge me, I managed to pick the lock. Inside, I find a small vial of pills labeled diazepam. Sedatives. My blood runs cold. This isn't just paranoia, it's proof. But before I can process what I found, I hear footsteps outside the door. Panicking, I shove the vial into my pocket and slip out just as Margaret walks in. Later that night, she corners me in the hallway. Her usual polished demeanor is gone, replaced by raw anger. "Stay out of my business, Elias," she hisses, her voice low and venomous. "You have no idea what you're dealing with." She doesn't know I took the vial. Not yet, but I can see in her eyes the fear, the desperation. Whatever game she's playing, she's losing control, and I'm smack dab in the middle of it. I can't keep this to myself anymore. That night, after everyone's gone to bed, I sit Serafina down in our room. She looks exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, but I know she deserves the truth, even if it hurts. I think your mom tried to poison me. I say bluntly, pulling the vial out of my pocket. Serafina stares at it, her face pale. At first, she refuses to believe me. No, she says firmly. There has to be another explanation. My mother wouldn't do something like this. But when I show her the financial records I found, the pieces start falling into place. Margaret's reckless spending, Victor's attempts to rein her in, the tension that's been simmering beneath the surface for years. It all adds up. Finally, she breaks down, tears streaming down her face. What do we do? She whispers. We expose her, I say, but we need proof. Something undeniable. Together, we hatch a plan. It's risky, but it's the only way to get answers without dragging Serafina's name through the mud. We decide to stage a fake argument, a loud, public fight that will push Margaret into revealing her hand. The next morning, over breakfast, I make sure to raise my voice. I can't live like this anymore, Sarah. I say, loud enough for Margaret to hear from the other room. Your family, this house, it's suffocating me. I didn't sign up for this. Serafina plays along perfectly, her voice trembling. Then leave. Go back to your little studio apartment. If you hate it so much. Margaret storms in, her face red with fury. What is going on here? She demands. This is your fault. I snap, pointing an accusing finger at her. Ever since we got married, you've treated me like garbage. You don't want me here. Fine. But if anything happens to me or Serafina, you'll regret it. For a split second, Margaret falters. Then she blurts out, You think I care about you? You're nothing but a parasite, leeching off this family. If it weren't for you, none of this would have happened. Bingo. I discreetly hit record on my phone, capturing every word. By the time she realizes what she said, it's too late. She clams her mouth shut, her face draining of color. Serafina looks at me, horrified but resolute. We have to tell Dad, she says softly. And just like that, the battle lines are drawn. Confronting Victor is harder than I expected. He's sitting in his study, nursing a glass of whiskey, looking older than I've ever seen him. When we play the recording of Margaret's outburst, he doesn't react right away. Instead, he sits there, staring into space, his expression unreadable. Finally, he speaks. I knew she was unhappy, he admits, his voice heavy with regret. But I never thought she'd go this far. Go this far? I echo, incredulous. She tried to poison us. Victor sighs, rubbing his temples. It's complicated, Elias. Margaret's always been impulsive, reckless, but she's also trapped. Trapped in a marriage she never wanted, a life she resents. I thought cutting her off financially would force her change, but he trails off, shaking his head. So what do we do now? Serafina asks, her voice barely above a whisper. Victor hesitates, then says something that sends chills down my spine. Maybe it's time she faced the consequences of her actions. The fallout is swift and brutal. Margaret's arrested later that week, charged with attempted murder. The press eats it up, plastering her face across every tabloid and news channel. The Montgomery name, once synonymous with wealth and prestige, is dragged through the mud. But as satisfying as it is to see justice served, I can't shake the feeling that something's still missing. Why did Margaret target me specifically? Was it personal, or was I just collateral damage in her war against Victor? And what about Victor himself? His calm acceptance of the situation feels off. My suspicions deepen when I discover a second set of financial records hidden in Victor's desk. These ones paint a very different picture. Far from being the victim, Victor's been siphoning money from the family trust for years, using it to fund shady investments overseas. Could he have orchestrated the entire scheme to frame Margaret and seize full control of the estate? I confront Victor in his study, armed with the evidence. At first, he denies everything, but when I press him, he cracks. Yes, I manipulated events, he admits, but only to protect the family. Without me, everything would fall apart. His words haunt me. Who's the real villain here? Victor's confession leaves me reeling, but it also forces me to confront a harsh reality. This family isn't just broken. It's rotten to the core. Margaret may have been reckless and vindictive, but Victor's machinations are far more calculated. He didn't just let her take the fall. He orchestrated the entire thing, using me as an unwitting pawn in his twisted game of chess. I leave his study feeling like I've stepped into some kind of moral quicksand. Do I expose him? If I do, Serafina will be devastated. Not just by her father's betrayal, but by the destruction of everything she thought she knew about her family. On the other hand, if I stay silent, I'm complicit in his lies. Either way, there's no clean exit. That night, I lie awake staring at the ceiling, replaying Victor's words over and over in my head. Sometimes, he'd said, a little chaos is needed to preserve order. It sounds almost reasonable when you say it like that, but the truth is uglier than any justification can cover up. Chaos doesn't preserve anything. It consumes everything in its path. And right now, I feel like I'm standing on the edge, watching the flames creep closer. The climax hits during another tense family dinner, because apparently we're cursed to resolve all our issues over food. This time, though, it's just the three of us. Me, Serafina, and Victor. Margaret's absence looms large, a ghost haunting every corner of the mansion. I decide to lay my cards on the table. Pulling out the second set of financial records, I slide them across the table toward Victor. His face goes pale, then red with anger. "Where did you get these?" he demands, his voice low and dangerous. "Does it matter?" I counter. "What matters is why you lied. Why you used Margaret and me to protect yourself." Serafina looks between us, confusion giving way to horror as the pieces click into place. "Dad," she whispers, her voice trembling. "Is this true?" Victor hesitates, then sighs, defeated. "Yes," he admits, "but I did it for the family. For you. Everything I've done has been to keep this estate intact, to ensure your future. You think Margaret would have cared about any of that? She was bleeding us dry. And what about Elias?" Serafina shoots back, tears streaming down her face. "Was framing my mother part of your grand plan, too?" Victor doesn't answer, but his silence says enough. In the days following the confrontation, the Montgomery household feels like a war zone. Victor retreats to his study, emerging only for meals, while Serafina oscillates between rage and despair. As for me, I'm caught in the middle, trying to hold us together even as the foundation crumbles beneath our feet. Margaret's trial dominates the headlines, painting the Montgomery name in disgrace. Some relatives distance themselves entirely, while others offer hollow condolences. Through it all, I can't help but wonder if this is what Victor wanted, to isolate us, to make sure we had no choice but to rely on him. But as much as I want to hate him, I can't ignore the fact that he's still Serafina's father. And despite everything, she loves him. That love is complicated, messy, and sometimes downright infuriating, but it's real. One afternoon, Victor surprises me by showing up at the construction site, where I've been working on renovating part of the estate. He looks older, wearier, like the weight of his secrets is finally catching up to him. "I owe you an apology," he says, his voice gruff, "for dragging you into this mess, for using you." I don't say anything at first, letting the words hang in the air. Finally, I nod. "You hurt Sarah," I tell him, "and that's something I'll never forgive." He nods, accepting my judgment. Then, after a long pause, he adds, "If you ever need anything, if you ever want to walk away, you have my blessing." It's not much, but it's something. Serafina and I spend hours talking, crying, and piecing together fragments of our shattered lives. She admits that she feels betrayed by both her parents, but she also knows that cutting ties completely would destroy her. Together, we decide to focus on rebuilding, not just our relationship, but ourselves. As part of that process, I start redesigning parts of the estate, stripping away the opulence and replacing it with warmth and simplicity. It's symbolic, sure, but it's also therapeutic. Every wall I knock down feels like shedding another layer of the toxic legacy we've inherited. Slowly, life begins to stabilize. Serafina channels her energy into reviving the art gallery where we first met, turning it into a community hub. Victor embraces retirement, focusing on mentoring young entrepreneurs instead of clinging to wealth. Even Margaret's trial comes to an end, though the scars left by her actions remain. Through it all, Serafina and I grow closer, leaning on each other in ways we never imagined. We're not the same people we were before this nightmare began. And maybe that's a good thing. Just when it seems like we've turned a corner, I receive an anonymous letter containing photos of Margaret meeting with a mysterious man shortly before her arrest. The caption reads, "The truth is what you think." My stomach churns as I realize the story isn't over yet. The photos lead me down another rabbit hole, one that uncovers evidence suggesting Margaret wasn't acting alone. Someone else, a shadowy figure pulling strings from behind the scenes, was involved. Could Victor have orchestrated the entire scheme to frame Margaret and seize full control of the family fortune? Or is there someone else lurking in the shadows? I dig deeper, uncovering connections between Victor and the mysterious man in the photos. It turns out they've been working together for years, manipulating events to consolidate power within the Montgomery family. Margaret wasn't just a victim of circumstance. She was a scapegoat, carefully chosen to take the fall. In the final twist, I confront Victor with evidence. He confesses, not to framing Margaret, but to orchestrating events to ensure the family stayed intact under his leadership. Sometimes, he says, a little chaos is needed to preserve order. The story ends ambiguously. Elias and Serafina must decide whether to expose Victor's machinations or let sleeping dogs lie, knowing that Eve,